In this screencast, we're going to use the desktop version of Eclipse, and we're going to import the IoT services reference application and build it. So the first thing we need to do is start up our Eclipse environment. I'm using Eclipse Neon. And when prompted, I'm going to use a brand new workspace. So I've created a workspace called Workspace Test, and which has nothing in it. It'll be a brand new workspace. And once that starts up, we will resize things and move things around just a bit. To at least my liking, I always try to give myself as much room as I can for all the code, so I usually move those sorts of tabs out of the code space and rearrange things so they're convenient to access. So the first thing you'll want to do, since this is a brand new workspace, is to add a Tomcat server to your environment. And you can do that by selecting the Servers tab, clicking on the hyperlink here, and scroll up to Apache, because we're going to use Apache Tomcat, and in this case version 8.5. So select that from the list, click Next, and then browse to where you downloaded your Tomcat installation. Select the root directory for that and click Finish. And you will see that we now have a Tomcat server within our development environment. And if we start that up, you can see that it starts up pretty fast and we got no errors. So looking good so far. So now let's import the services reference application into our environment. And you can do this by selecting the File, Import menu from Eclipse. And since this is an existing Eclipse project that I've checked into GitHub, we can select the General, Existing Projects into Workspace. So the one thing you want to do, obviously, before you get this far is you'll want to clone the IoT services reference application, or you can use the template out of the SDK and clone those down onto your local environment. So once I do that, then I can go select that code from my local file system. You can see here's my local repository for GitHub where I download and clone all my projects, and I'll select the cloud services application. And the one important setting here that you'll want to check is copy projects into Workspace. This will make sure the code that's in your local Git repository gets copied into this workspace, and you're not referencing code that is actually part of your local repository, which is not good practice because Eclipse and Git all put hidden directories onto the file system, and you'll end up cluttering your local repository with potentially configuration files and etc. that you don't want under version control. So make sure you select the copy project into Workspace and just click Finish. And you can see that this project got imported into Eclipse. So the next thing we'll want to do is build the project. And we're going to build that using our Maven configuration file that comes with the reference application. So the first thing we need to do is set up a run configuration for our build. So there you can select under the Run menu, Run Configurations. And one of the options is to run a build file, Maven build file. So if we select Maven build and collect new, then we can set up a script to build our application using Maven. So the first thing you want to do is give your run configuration a nice name. So my Maven build. You will then want to set the base directory for your run environment. So for Maven, we can just select the root of our workspace. And the Maven goals we'll want to run are the clean and package goals, which will clean all previous build output, build the project, and package it up per the requirements that we've specified in our Maven POM file. Now you want to get in the habit of also setting your profile. The profile that we're going to use is dev, and if we were to build this, leverage this build file outside of Eclipse, we want to make sure we do that. If you're going to run everything within Eclipse, that isn't necessarily something that you would need to configure, and I'll show you what configuration file does get picked up by default. So we can click Apply and Run, and our build and packaging will get kicked off. It builds pretty fast. And you can see we built our application and it produced an output of cloudservices.war, and all the Maven output is actually located in your target directory. Now, to get the code to be picked up, I don't know whether this is a bug in Eclipse, but we'll want to refresh our workspace to make sure that all of the directories are available in our workspace, because if you were to right click and look on the properties of the project, you can see that under the build path for this particular project, by default all the output is going to the target directory, and for our Java files, all our classes are going to be put in classes. So the one other thing that you'll want to do to make sure that Tomcat picks up any changes you make while you're modifying the project is to go under the order and export and make sure that Maven dependencies are part of your build class path order and exported. So when we deploy this project to Tomcat, all of the Maven dependencies and its output get picked up by Tomcat. So make sure you navigate over to the order and export and click the Maven dependencies. And then the last thing we'll need to do is go over to our server and add this project to its output. So if we go over to the Servers tab and right-click on the server and do Add and Remove, we can then go add our project to Tomcat. And now when we start our server, our cloud services application should get deployed and be running. And sure enough, you can see remnants of our application starting up. Basically Spring Security and Spring started up, the container, and our application started without issue. So the one thing to also note is that as part of this project, under the source directory, there is a configuration file under config that is the default config properties that will be used when you're running your application in Eclipse. And the one thing that you'll want to do here is adjust your database username and password, the credentials that we'll be using to connect to your database. You'll want to go in the source config and the config properties and adjust this accordingly based on your database configuration. And once you do that, you should be able to start the application and have it connect to the database and run. So to test out our environment, we can start a browser instance and navigate to our environment at localhost. My Tomcat server is running on port 8080. Our application name is Cloud Services, and to invoke our REST service, we will use the REST URI, so Jersey servlet and JAX-RS get instantiated. We know our weather service is configured for the /weather URI, and we can invoke our test method with the /test URI. So when I run this, remember that our service is running under basic HTTP authentication. I've previously run this in my browser, so Safari is going to ask me whether it can go into my keychain and get those credentials. So I'm going to allow those credentials, and sure enough, our test method got invoked. So you may, the first time you run this, you may get prompted to enter a username and password to access our credentials, access that REST service, and that is configured under web content, under security context, which is where all our Spring security settings and configuration are, and our security username and password is located in the security context file. So when you're prompted, you will want to enter this username and this password, and then Jersey and Spring will then let you invoke the test method. So that's all there is to getting the IoT services application imported into Eclipse. This is assuming you also have the MySQL database all set up. There is another screencast that shows how to do that. So look for that. And other than that, pretty straightforward. I actually set up Eclipse with a running project in a matter of minutes. And hopefully you can achieve the same thing. So look forward to your next screencast. Talk to you later. Bye.